Welcome to another episode of Culture 8 Podcasts, brought to you by Ezini, your trusted partner in building thriving workplace cultures. Here we explore the intricate and dynamic world of organizational cultures, uncovering insights and strategies to help leaders and teams foster environments where people and businesses can grow together. Today we are talking to John W. Woodward, Honorary Consul of Slovakia, and is also the founder of J.W. Woodward Partner Consulting. Welcome to the podcast, John. It's an honor to host you today.
Thank you, Gaurav. It's a pleasure. Pleasure to be here indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Please tell us what's exciting in your world today.
What's exciting in my world today? Well, as you gave in the brief introduction, I'm Honorary Consul of Slovakia, and we can go into that in a little bit in my work as part of the Georgia Consular Corps. And then my day job, you can call it that. I did air quotes there. I'm not sure if they made it into the camera. My day job is heading up this independent consultancy that I founded, as you mentioned, J.W. Woodward Partners, jwwoodward.com. And that is basically it's what I've been doing for, a quarter of a century is international trade and development, international trade and investment consulting, U.S. market entry consulting for companies that are exploring the U.S. market, entering this market. To some degree, a trade side, that's the converse, and we can go into that some as well. And then general economic development, which has been my background.
Fantastic. Well, so before we take a deep dive, or unless you want to add some more about the consulting and or your role at the consulate.
Well, I mean, on the consulting side, it's a practice that principally I have as my clients, international companies, mostly SMEs, small medium enterprises, from overseas that are considering entering the U.S. market, exploring the U.S. market. They come in either because they already have a customer or a client in the U.S. market, or they have built a better mousetrap. They have a better service. They have a better product that they want to bring to what is still, with all of the turmoil going on, nevertheless, is still the world's largest consumer market. And so these are companies coming in from obviously countries that are much smaller than ours.
Right.
It's a big step to come into the U.S. market, to find a site if that's needed for a particular a building or purpose. To go through the various steps needed to enter the U.S. market. And so my practice consults and advises companies in that regard. Obviously, these are interesting times for that. And we can perhaps go into that a little bit. I just came back from Europe last week, where I got an earful from some companies. So that's what that practice does, that business does. And again, that's my day job. Yeah. And then my role as honorary consulate. I'm Honorary Consul of Slovakia as part of the Georgia Consular Corps, which is comprised about half and half of career consuls, which I'm not. These are professional foreign service diplomats from their respective countries. And then the other half, I'd say about 40 or so out of 75 or 80 total, are honorary consuls like myself, which are officially credentialed positions by the U.S. State Department and by the respective country. Right. And we basically represent the interest of that country and perform fairly routine consular services in certain jurisdictions that have been designated. My jurisdiction is Honorary Consul of Slovakia, is for Georgia and South Carolina, although I cover de facto, de jure is Georgia and South Carolina. De facto, it seems to be several other U.S. states surrounding us as well. But that's my role I do there.
Gotcha. That's really, really fascinating. I think it's apt that we are having these conversations. I was going through the questions earlier, and I remember everything else is going to take a deep look into your experiences across multicultural organizations and macro culture organizations, because they're both U.S. and other different countries oriented. So it's going to be I'm looking forward to our conversations.
Likewise.
Thank you. But before we begin, I would like for my viewers to know a little bit about you. So tell us about your very first job.
My very first job. Well, I mean, besides the usual cutting the neighbors' lawns and whatnot. Uh, uh, my first bona fide job with a paycheck that got taxed uh, was actually was actually scooping ice cream in the middle of downtown Richmond
No way. Okay.
when I was maybe 14 or so, 14 or 15. I would get on my bicycle and ride from my home to downtown Richmond, which was where I grew up in Richmond, Virginia,
Very
and
cool.
rode down to the corners of 10th and Main Streets in downtown Richmond, right across the street from the what was
Nice.
then either UVB or Crestar or it was some predecessor of what's now Truist Bank.
Gotcha.
And I was there from about 10 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon with a cart on the sidewalk scooping ice cream. So and that was back when downtowns, both in Richmond and everywhere, frankly, had a lot more day workers,
Right.
unfortunately, than they do now. And so there is a brisk business there at lunchtime, folks coming out, especially in summertime, which is when I did it, to get a nice cold scoop of ice cream. So there's not much I can say about my strategic development in that role. I'm sure some AI chatbot could probably make it sound really impressive. But the fact of the matter is, I was scooping ice cream out of a cart on the sidewalk. But rode my bike downtown, rode back, and that was good. And then I guess my first one after that, when I was driving, I had another non-strategically developmental job, but it was the King's Dominion theme park just up the road from Richmond, and I was so happy that I could drive, and I drove up there. Probably spent all my income in gas money just driving up there, but I drove up there for a princely minimum wage at the time, which was, I'm embarrassed to say. And I told people to keep their hands and legs inside the boat at all times for the Magic Mountain boat ride.
Nice.
So that was that. I had to dress up in a silly costume and did all that. But there you go. That was it.
Yes.
And indeed learned about taxes and FICA and all those things because you look at your paycheck and you see all these things that are coming out of it. So it's a learning lesson at that age.
Yes. No,
That
I
was,
hear you.
yeah.
Uh, I'll relate a little bit about this because my daughter is actually her first job is also at an ice cream shop. It's called Where the Scoop, downtown Alpharetta. So it's fantastic. She loves it. She's learning about customer services. She's learning about saving money. She's learning about earning, and of course, as you said, taxes.
Yeah, that's what you do. It sounds like she's actually indoors though, so that's
Yes,
downright cushy compared to.
indeed, indeed.
But no, that's great. No, it is. It's fascinating to have it. My daughter is roughly of this age, and we're even in the discussion now what her first job is going to be, a bona fide job like that, because it's a real world lesson when you start
Yes.
getting those things pulled out of your paycheck.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, so let's move on to the main topic of our conversation. So as an honorary consul for Slovakia, as well as in your own consulting, so you've got a quarter of a century of experience. How do you navigate culture differences in your diplomatic role as well as your consulting, and what lessons can business leaders take from that?
Well, it's interesting that whether it's my honorary consul role or my job in trade and investment, international trade and investment consulting, that's actually part and parcel of it, is managing those cultural differences, or really working with those cultural differences. I
Right.
wouldn't say cultural differences are ones to manage.
Hmm.
That is, you don't want to impose your culture or do some sort of thing like that on someone else. That's the whole purpose of the awareness of them. But I
Right.
would say really is knowing uh, not the nuances, but the specifics of different cultural differences, and then how to not manage those, but how to work with those
Yes.
and accommodate those really
Yeah.
in your business or in the consular work that I do. And interestingly, obviously Slovakia, I'm sure most of the viewers should know, but it's part of the former Czechoslovakia, for those old enough to remember that.
Yeah.
A relatively young country, only about 32 years old or so,
Yeah.
but Slovakia in Central Europe. And so obviously there's a European bent to that. And then, of course, I do a lot of my work with European companies, and my day job is principally European work, some Canadian, some South American, and some Asian. And of course, you have completely different cultural aspects with all of those, not just within those macro regions, those Asia, North
Yeah.
America, South America, Europe, but even within those
Yeah.
within those regions, and some are more pronounced than others. And quite frankly, I'm more adroit with some than others. Obviously, I'm not Asian. I dabble in a couple of Asian languages, but I'm not proficient by any stretch. And so that is an issue there where I need to do a lot of adapting for the cultural differences. And I've done a lot of work with Asia, principally Japan and Korea and PRC and Taiwan. Um, but um, but certainly that requires adaptation on my part. Whereas in Europe, for example, whereas I say most of my business nowadays comes from, I mean, I lived in Europe. I lived in France for quite some time, and right on the border of Germany for part of that. So there is a strong connection already in place. I speak a couple of the languages. I'm familiar with that, and with that. But even within there, that's where it gets that intra differences. And so, for example, Central Europe, Slovakia and Czech Republic and Poland and Hungary, for example, which are collectively called the V4, the Visegrad Four,
Hmm.
they sort of have an identity amongst themselves.
Very cool.
And frankly, it's a little different from the more western part of Europe that many Americans already know, if only from tourism,
Right.
such as France or Germany
Yeah.
or UK. And so there's certainly some understanding those cultural differences there. And then, of course, you throw in, South America, Brazil, Argentina, where I've done work, or Canada, and there's all these different ones there. So not managing, again, accommodating those,
Yes.
acknowledging those is critical to the business, both my business that I do, but also what I advise. And then working with those companies coming into the US, because as any American knows, heaven knows, we've got our own
Yes.
slew of cultures within this region that differ. And so that's part of the advisory work I do as well.
That's fantastic. So I'll be honest, I used to think of myself as very culturally competent. And that's the word which is really crucial at this conversation, is the fact that what we need to be is culturally competent, and to have that agility and adaptability to be able to observe what the basic assumptions are, or possibly the nuances, as you said. I mean, it's really to observe and to be able to not compromise, not manage. It's really to work well together. It's like a dance. It's really to dance well together. So
Exactly. That's exactly, and that's the type of advisory work I do as well. But you're exactly correct. It's not really to manage, not to impose your
yes,
views on those,
yep,
but to acknowledge and appreciate those. And then from a business perspective, um, how do you help that become a means to an end for accomplishing a business goal?
yep, exactly, exactly. Awesome. So we go on to the next one. What are some cultural strengths you've observed in Slovakia, and that the US based companies or leaders could learn from?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned, there are different cultural differences within Central Europe, say, and Western Europe. And I already kind of jumped the gun there on the V4 description, but because I just got back from Slovakia last week, and there was in fact a V4 Visegrad 4, which is Slovakia, Czech Republic, Poland, and Hungary. And to their credit, to the V4's credit, these countries are sort of I wouldn't say binding together because they're all sovereign nations, of course, but they are realizing their collective strength. And there were several statistics thrown out during our conference of, if all four of these countries were indeed one country, their GDP would rival, I think, that of Germany or something like that. I mean, so they are coming together and really, I think, leaning into their cultural I wouldn't say idiosyncrasies, but what they do, their culture there, and how they can, frankly, better promote and market it. Because within their culture, they haven't done as much. It hasn't. I mean, even Americans here probably aren't as familiar with. I feel quite certain aren't as familiar with Slovakia as they are with Switzerland. And so part of that is a matter of really doing what they're doing, and that is finding their collective strength, their collective messaging, their collective voice, and better marketing that, from a business perspective and tourism perspective too. And then working within that, to build the workforce and other things that are needed for any sort of business function. Um, I would say for what you learned from that, sort of to answer your question there, I mean, Slovakia, I mean, just to go back to that, I mean, Slovakia is a country of 5.3 million people. I mean, it's basically the country of Slovakia is about the same population as that of metropolitan Atlanta. And so clearly, and as I said before, it's a relatively young country, and not as well known as some. So clearly, what the Slovakian businesses do, and there's some very interesting, innovative businesses, ones that I met there just last week. But they realize they kind of need to go that extra push to get known. And then for the ones that are looking to come to the U.S., of course, I mean, the U.S. is going to be a giant player. Here you've got a small company or SME, let's say, coming from a smaller country into this larger market. They're clearly not going to come in and impose or manage their culture on this. They're going to have to adapt. But because, frankly, they are from a smaller market, they're used to adapting. So that's something, and it's not unique to Slovakia or even to, say, a Central European. I mean, a parallel example might be Sweden, for example, with which I'm very familiar. I've done a lot of work there as well. I'm on the board of the Swedish American Chamber of Commerce here in Atlanta. A great group of folks. But Sweden, kind of to keep that parallel going, Sweden, the population of Sweden is about just shy of 11 million, I think. Population of the state of Georgia is a little bit north of 11 million. But I mean, basically, Sweden and Georgia about roughly the same in population, the state of Georgia. So in Sweden, there are a lot of innovative companies coming out of there as well. If they want to grow, they've got to grow beyond their 10.5, 11 million people.
Right.
Same with the Slovakian company. So they are often looking at the U.S. market, as I said earlier, because there's that potential. But they realize they need to shift and adjust to marketing and cultural and business adaptations for this market. But on the same token, they bring with them, whether from Sweden or from Slovakia, some of these smaller countries, they bring their cultural specificities to play. And I think many of them, and advise them, they can use that as a marketing advantage when they come into the U.S. Whether it's, Swedish, Volvo is known as a safe car, right? Or something, whatever it might be, whether it's an idiosyncrasy or not, it's marketing 101. You play into it if it's beneficial. And then for a country like Slovakia, which doesn't have perhaps some of these well-known traits or attributes, then it's a blank slate. They can create that, and there's a lot of interest coming out of that area. So I advise them there's a lot of opportunity for that.
It's interesting what you said about a blank slate, and it's really a blank slate. It's really when we talk about culture, irrespective of whether it's an organization or a group or a country, right, or a profession, any of these groups, they will create a culture, again, based on the culture definition. The culture of a organization or a group it's shared learning. It's a product of shared learning as it solves the problems or challenges that it faces to exist externally or internally. And then these, based on time, over time it becomes these basic espoused values and beliefs, which transform into the basic assumptions. This is how we do things out here. Eventually, they will fall out of awareness. So, talking about the definition of organization and culture, like you said, it's a slate. It's a blank slate. They can write. They will get to know what their culture is based on how they adapt to circumstances, how they face these challenges, and how they transfer that information and learning from that transformation to the new folks who have joined the group and organizations.
Well, and you did a phrase there that I hear a lot. You said a phrase, and that is kind of a third rail of international trade and investment. It's like, this is how we do things.
Yeah.
And that's something that, quite frankly, both sides are I would say guilty of. Both sides fall into that trap, let's say.
Right.
this is how we've always done it. This is how we do things. This is how we make our decisions. This is how we approach our marketing, whatever it might be. But
Yeah.
the adage, "This is how we do things," is is a is one that needs to be shaken
Yes.
when you're doing the cross border, and it goes both ways. Now, Americans, not to paint a broad brush, when Americans are going overseas, that's a tip of, oh well, this is how we've always done it this way. And of course, there's a lot of learning to be done.
Yes.
To your question of when you're going to that culture, when folks are coming over to America, not to give particular countries here and there, but there are some, I would say, some nationalities that tend to say, oh, well, this is the way we do it. We're always done it this way, and we're going to continue. Whereas there are others, such as perhaps Slovakia, which is coming smaller anyway, who are immediately coming in, well, we're going to come in and adapt because we have to.
Yeah.
But that either way, the
Yeah.
the attitude, this is how we've always done it, is the third rail of trade and investment. You need to, whether they're coming in here or whether our folks are going over there,
Yeah.
to find that local vibe, both a cultural vibe and a business vibe, because
Yeah.
they're directly related. If you're doing it, and try to avoid that mentality. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. That's something that is, we see that all the time, and that's why consultants like me are out there because
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
we advise to watch out for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when you mention this is how we do things out here, it's pretty much the fact that you've always done things this way. That's where it becomes your culture. Now, what you said, that we've got to shake that, and that's exactly what, I don't know if you've read the book Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge, and he talks about the only way we're going to innovate and grow and we're going to prosper is by changing our basic assumptions, which is basically what you're trying to say is we've got to think about differently about how we do things here. Otherwise, we are just going to be stuck in the same cycle of thought process and we will not get any further. Coming back to the two countries coming together to work, it's even more applicable over there. And really the companies or the countries or the companies that are coming from different countries working together, they have to, like we talked about, they have to have the adaptability to look at things like A wants it this way, America wants it this way, Slovakia wants it this way. We have to use and this is something which I'm picking off of from conflict resolution. We have to use the language of and versus the but. So that and provides you that A wants this, B wants this. So it's an and. So now what is it, the solution that we can come up with? None of these perspectives are wrong. We have to really understand that this is the way we do things out here. Is a very solid core belief of internal people. Like it's internal to us. If I try to ask you to change your core beliefs, that's going to get you into several anxiety modes.
Yeah.
So that's why it's an and. That's why it's also a place where we have to be cognizant of the fact that both viewpoints are important, and we have to come together to a compromise to understand how we're going to move forward, which is adaptability.
Well, you're right when you say this is the way we do things. The way I view it, the companies that I talk to, the very fact that they are contemplating cross-border expansion, that they're contemplating entering the U.S. market, which is no small step. The very fact that they're there indicates that they've been successful. That you would not do this if you weren't already successful. You weren't already doing. You would not be doing this. You wouldn't be taking this step if you weren't already doing something right.
Yes.
And so you're right. You don't need to change, but it's a matter of adjusting for coming into that market. You might have the best widget in all of Bratislava that you've created.
Yeah.
And you say, hey, I've got this best widget that I've created in Bratislava. I want to bring this to the world's largest consumer market, which is great. And so, yes, you've already have a foundation. This is how we've done it, and this is a good thing. It's a success. And then it's a matter, as you say, not but and. Say, all right, I'm going in here. I'm going to bring this great widget into this market. What do I need to do now to adjust here? And again, the converse is equally true. So someone has a great widget out of Alpharetta, and they want to bring it on over. Well, you've been successful in Alpharetta. You're at a point you want to expand internationally, which we encourage, because that helps against downturns, recessions. There's all sorts of studies that international expansion, even for SMEs, is beneficial. So you've got to reach. had a certain point of success because you've done things a certain way. Now you're going to internationalize, which is a great step.
Yep.
And again, it's not a but, it's an and. So what does that mean for that step when you internationalize, when you go to that location?
Yep. Fantastic. I love it. This was one of the best conversations. So thank you. Uh, um, I think, I don't know if I missed this question. What did I ask? All right. How do you think the role of culture is shifting in today's world of rapid globalization and digital diplomacy?
Well, as I said, I just came back from a week or so, about a week plus in Slovakia. I was there partly to meet. There's a gathering of worldwide gathering of honorary consuls from all around the world. Slovakia really has a lot, has about 165, I think, and about 100 showed up in Bratislava. It was also to lay the foundation for a trade mission, actually, that I'm doing later this year with my colleague, the Honorary Consul of Hungary. We'll be doing Hungary and Slovakia in mid-September. So anyone interested, we could follow up later on that.
Yes, please.
But the main benefit out of that, Gaurav, was seeing the people in person, and it was really quite something. That obviously we're having a digital conversation right now. Obviously, all this took off, especially during COVID, by fate rather than by design. It continued by design. This digitalization of communication, but the value of seeing folks in person cannot be underestimated. And so I was reminded of that just last week when I was in Slovakia. I've known some of these folks around the world. I had the benefit of meeting lots of others in person. And those were just tremendous business connections, expanding my global business network vastly, that I could not have done it, not to the same level, not to the same quality in a digital communication. And so I know the airlines they're not subsidizing this conversation. They would love to hear this. But there is a tremendous value in jumping on a plane and doing that.
Yeah.
What the digital communication does, it does allow on the front end a lot more flexibility.
Yes.
It helps my business development efforts, for example, and doing things without having to jump on a plane and starting conversations, introducing yourself.
Yeah.
But if you're really going to, especially when we talk here about cultural understanding and cultural appreciation, that's really difficult to do when you're looking at a screen.
Yeah.
And so you really need that in person. So I would say that the digital, it's almost like your other one of but and and. It's not an either or. It's an and. There's certainly a tremendous value to digital communication, to the globalization of that. But, and again, my hair probably indicates I'm a little old school, perhaps. But there is enormous value still in that interaction, face to face. Whether you are going there or they are coming here, wherever here might be. And especially for the subject of this conversation here, that cultural difference, that's where it makes a real difference.
Yeah, I totally agree. Whenever I talk to my clients and I'm talking about, look, I'm 100% remote organization. I would also, if your job is remote capable, make it 100% remote. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're always remote. The thing is, there are two sides to this. One is you should have face-to-face communication, face-to-face meetings so that people can strengthen the bonds that they make over digital communication, right?
Right.
But at the same time, in this world, an agent world today, it is possible for us to do, like you said, I can do many, many things more sitting at my home and still be able to communicate and make a relationship there. However, I will strengthen it by going and visiting them, still getting on a plane and creating a better bond. So to speak.
Or even just going across town. I mean, I first met you in person, right? And that was what's the old adage? 90% is actually just showing up or something like that. I'm butchering that. And
so true. I mean, and I really did. I just showed up because I was not aware. And every time I go to this, probably you've seen it in my LinkedIn post. every networking event that I go to, I just show up with the best intention. What am I going to say yes to today?
Yeah.
So
So
awesome.
it's again, it's not a but, it's an
Yes,
and.
it's an ad. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Um, what advice would you give to leaders looking to balance their organizational identity with the respect for the cultures of their partners, clients, or employees abroad?
Well, that's a pretty vast question there. I mean, a lot we've covered here. I mean, it
Yeah.
obviously on the internal side, and my current practice is a very small practice, my independent consultancy, but I've worked with very large organizations, and I mean, the internal culture is critically important to that, both on a management level and the staff level.
Mm.
And there are all sorts of lectures and series on that. But I mean, a lot of it is same as the international side. It's understanding that staff, understanding if you're the manager, understanding your staff,
Yes.
and then there is an obligation, vice versa, for the staff to understand where the management is coming from. But there should be clarity and communication, so everyone should know about that.
Gold nuggets all over, sir. Clarity
Well,
and
look at
understanding.
that. Good.
Yeah.
I get a star.
Yes.
And then on international, it's the same thing. It's a little bit more ad hoc on
Yeah.
international
Mhm.
because, as I indicated earlier, it's going to be a lot different. Again, not at the risk of stereotyping here, but it's going to be a lot different. Um, Learning those cultural management cues
Yeah.
from, say, if I were doing work with a Korean company or a Japanese company or a Taiwanese company,
Yeah.
mainly because I don't speak the language, I didn't live there. There are others who are clearly do speak the language and can do that. Um, it's different from that, from what it would be on one where you might have a greater familiarity.
Yeah.
And so, and also, it's frankly, again, at the risk of stereotyping, some of these international companies, some will come in
Yeah.
and say, "Hey, I'm going to come on in. I'm going to enter the market. I'm going to, I would say, do it as we've always done it, but
Yeah.
kind of go in with minimal crutches, minimal assistance."
Right.
Whereas others really like to have that that culture, that similarity, and like-minded folks around them. And
Yeah.
so it really varies, I think, from with some of these different companies coming from different countries, how they enter the market. Um, there are some countries that I've worked with, the companies that come in, they just kind of come in guns a-blazing and they're just going to do their thing. Whereas others really want to sit back. They come very methodically. They want to seek out those who, I won't say those who look like them, but those who are within their spheres, let's say, and really kind of to dip their toe in the water and do it, uh, maybe not cautiously but methodically. And so there's a difference even on the cross border side, but the intra side, as I said, it's just basically management. You know, it's management 101, quite
Yeah.
frankly.
Nice. Fantastic. All right. So time for some rapid fire questions. What book do you recommend the most?
What book do I recommend? Well, let's see. I recently finished. I think Jonathan Alter was the writer. It's a biography of Jimmy Carter. It's just obviously since he recently passed.
Hmm.
I think is his very best. I think it's called, and it's just a tremendous. It's probably the most recent biography written of him, most comprehensive. I was a big fan of Jimmy Carter. It's fascinating to read that. So that would be something that was, I wouldn't say the most, but it's something I recently finished. It came out before his death,
Right.
but more recently. I'm currently reading Franklin and Winston, which is a John Meacham, another historian, book on the relationship between Franklin Roosevelt and Winston Churchill. I'm not sure if I would say that, but number one recommendation, but that's one that's currently on my bedside table.
Awesome.
But yeah, so those are, I tend to go for those that have a historical precedence to them
Yeah.
because I like to learn that, but I'm not immune to reading a silly mystery novel as well sometime.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Awesome. Thank you. Uh, what's one thing people would be surprised to learn about you?
Surprised to learn about me. Uh, I used to many moons ago race sailboats. So I was a small sailboats, but I was a sailboat racer, and so I was only in a few regattas, and would do that mostly individuals. I mean, small enough to be sole skipper, um, and um, and if anyone really wants to track down, they didn't have cell phones and things back in those days, so there were probably not many pictures. But my sail number is actually is actually I use that for a lot of my codes and things like that because I can remember it. So because all these have sail numbers, but yeah, I used to do sailboat racing. How about that?
Oh, that's very fascinating. That's awesome. Pretty cool. As soon as you said it, sailboat racing came into my mind, and like people running across that, I don't know, catamaran or
Oh yeah, yeah. The catamarans. Yeah, again, mine were sole, kind of like my consultancy is a sole. It's a small practice.
same like mine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so
awesome.
I wouldn't be the ones doing. It would catamaran, whether a 16-foot Hobie
Yeah.
was about as big, or lasers or sunfish, or sailboats like that that were you could sail by yourself. That was what I would do.
Cool, cool.
Usually up in the Mid Atlantic.
Awesome. Um, how can our listeners connect with you?
Well, for the if it's consular business, the Honorary Consul of Slovakia, it's on Consul, HONCONSUL, on Consul at Slovak Atlanta, SLOVAK Atlanta.us, not .com or .org.us, Slovak Atlanta.us. For consular business, my day job, JW Woodward Partners, is John, JOHN, at jwwoodward.com, JWWOODWARD.com.
Awesome.
So yeah, either way, and again, I give a shout out to. I encourage your listeners if they are interested in the international side, the consular corps here in Georgia. We're very fortunate to have a robust consular corps. As I mentioned, about 80 or so consulates, half of whom are honorary, half of whom are career. But if they do have an interest in engaging in certain international, especially particular countries, I encourage finding what they're doing, what those consuls are doing, because it's a great way to get involved with those areas there.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, there you have it, folks. Another amazing episode of Culture 8 podcast. It was a great honor, and so many thanks for the insightful conversations, John. Thank you so much.
Oh, I appreciate it, Gaurav. Thank you very much for the opportunity.